All right, so we're going to get started here with circles in geometry, and I just want to encourage you to just think logically, just think reasonably. I've been tutoring a long time, and I know that kids hate geometry. Don't think about geometry, just think about common sense. Think about seeing a problem, actually seeing it with your eyes, rather than memorizing a set of rules, which I know you love to do, but you're not going to do it for this, all right? So some of this might be review. There might be something in this circles part where you're like, oh, that's what that means. That figures it out for me. So I just encourage you to watch it to the end, and you might learn something. All right, so switch over and let's look at what I'm doing here. All right, let's start with some definitions. A circle is a set of points that are a given distance from another point in a plane. So let's say there's this point here. Let's call that point A, right? So everything a fixed distance from that A is called the circle. All right? This, from a point on the circle to the center of the circle, is called the radius. We often abbreviate that with an R, all right? And of course, the radius is always, always, always the distance between the center and any point on that circle. All right, if you have circles with the same center, then you call them concentric. So here's a concentric circle right here, if it also has the same center A. And here's another concentric circle out here, right? I'm just drawing it faint because I don't want to mix you up. We say that two circles are congruent if they have congruent radii. All right? So two circles are congruent, right? If same radii. A point on the inside, in the interior of the circle, let's say, let's take this point here. Let's call this point B, right? Now, look, you know it's on the interior of the circle because you can see it, right? And you know that this point here, if we call that C, that's exterior of the circle. But you need to know that one of the things that we know by definition, right, is that this point is on the interior of the circle if it's less than one radius away from the center. So you see, here's the radius. If it's less than one radius away from the center, then it's interior. And if it's more than one radius away, see, not quite making it, this is more, then it's exterior. Just hang with me, you might learn something. Okay, a point is on the circle if it is one radius from the center, right? Now, why do we say on the circle? Like, isn't B on the circle? Well, I think you already know the circle is this infinite number of points. So it's actually just the edge. It's all the infinite number of points, and points have no surface area, right? The infinite number of points that are one radius away from the center. So that means B is not on the circle. It's in the circle, but it's not on the circle. All right? And of course, C is also not on the circle. On the circle would be this point here if it is exactly one radius away from R. And let's call that point X. All right? And we're going to call this circle O. And here's a little tip for you. If something is called a circle O, then you know that O is the center. So it doesn't have to both say O is the center and it's called circle O. You can assume O is the center if it's called circle O. Okay? All right, so here you go. A chord is a segment that joins any 2 points on the circle. So is O on the circle? No, O is not on the circle, right? Let's call this point A, and let's call this point B. A and B are on the circle. So a line connecting A and B is called a chord, C-H-O-R-D, a chord. And a diameter is a chord that passes through the center. So let's still use A again. and it'll have a line that goes right through the center and ends up at C. Now, you might be thinking as you're watching this, it's not exactly straight, it's not a perfect circle. I can't tell you how many kids I've tutored. I've seen them waste their homework time breaking out a stencil and a ruler and erasing and re-erasing. Geometry is about understanding a concept. This represents a perfect circle. It's not a perfect circle. It represents one. And that's good enough. If you spend your time with a stencil and you don't learn geometry, you don't learn how to think, then that's not good enough. All right. You also should know from pre-algebra that the area of a circle, which is a discovered truth in nature, can be found with area equals pi times the radius squared. I'm not going to go into that right now. And that the circumference, this distance around, so here we're talking about area, here we're talking about distance. The distance around, which is called a circumference, right, can be found by multiplying pi times the diameter. All right? And in case you didn't know, that symbol's for pi, that symbol's for diameter. A is for area, C is for circle. Okay. Let's move on into some radius chord relationships, okay?